that we are increasing the green space here from just a pure parking lot for a more aesthetically pleasing downtown area. That said, I'll hand it over to Turner and then also to Steve because the architecture has changed significantly.
Before they start, is there any comments so far from any of the board members?
If there are later on as we go, I'd be happy to clarify the things that I went through.
I would definitely comment, regardless of this project's locale, it definitely is a countywide impact just because of the scope of the project. The city of Plattsburgh is the main, I don't know what you want to call it, metropolis in Clinton County. It's a county seat, it's a county government. So I would at least like to say that this project, regardless, does impact the county. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
Well,
Anyone else?
I echo what Tim just said. It's not metropolis, it's what we call micropolitan. But at the same time, it does have a county-wide impact because we're not only talking about space now, we're talking about people. This is the spots that the people from all over the county should be able to enjoy and come and shop and stay, hang out and enjoy the space here. That's not only focused on the physical, but also this is really a space for people to use. And I do think that's a huge county-wide impact from that perspective.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry, just one more thing about what's now versus what's being proposed. Like I said the last time, it is true that now it is a parking lot, it is pavement, but at least now it's a public parking space. Once it's turned into private, it's gonna lose that public feature. And then if this private project doesn't provide enough public use, this downtown space is gonna be, like I said, improvement is good. I said last time, improvement is good. As long as it has to be reasonable, good improvement that has a long-term impact instead of, like I said, once it's turned to private, it's gonna be very difficult for the public to access. If you look at the internal design, that's why I turned my attention to the internal design of the space, which further made me concerned about the lack of, the whole project not being welcoming to the public.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Anyone else? Okay, Steve, I guess you're next. I'll give you 5 minutes and then we're going to move on.
I think I handed it over to Turner Bradford, project engineer, to specifically go over the changes that were made to the plan.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. So Turner Bradford, McFarland Johnson, engineer on behalf of Prime here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. So as Charlie said, we have made some changes to the project in an attempt to address concerns that were brought up by the boards, the zoning board, the planning board, as well as this board. I'll just jump right into them. The first concern that was brought up was an open space, green space, and setbacks from the property lines. So the first thing we did was readjusted the building, brought all the brought all the building edges, with the exception of the southern face of the building, further into the site, making every building line more than 15 feet from the property line. So from the Durkee Street, Bridge Street, and walkway property lines, it is at a minimum 15, and in most places more than 15 feet, which if this were in the commercial zoning, that would be zoning compliant for a 5-story building. So obviously along Bridge Street and Durkee Street, that increases the the open space, the sidewalks, the accessibility for the pedestrians, and along the Riverwalk opens up visually and spatially for for that space along the Riverwalk. The next two things there were two items that we were able to sort of address in conjunction. There were concerns about the garage entrance on Bridge Street, which was at the northeast corner of the site, with potential pedestrian automobile conflicts in that area. So we eliminated the entrance to the basement garage. We didn't eliminate the basement garage. There's still a basement garage, but we combined the entrance to it with the entrance to the courtyard building. And in doing so, we actually relocated it within the building farther south down the building line to the south end of the building. So this pulled it farther away from Durkee and Bridge Street intersection, moving it a little bit away from any potential traffic there, and also combined it into a space that has good sight lines for pedestrians as well as automobiles. And in moving it to that location, when we did that, we, on the first floor, then eliminated the residential space from the first floor and put in parking. There's a little bit of confusion at some of our other meetings. There's still the second, third, fourth, and fifth floor above that, but the first floor in that space is open air parking with building above. And you can exit, or you can access the courtyard parking here, and then this is actually how you're going to access the basement garage. So if you drive in the site under that, along that first floor parking towards the river, you would turn left and drive under the amenity space into the basement garage. So that did two things. It eliminated all the traffic concerns on Bridge Street. In addition to some of the pedestrian automobile conflict, I think that this board had some concerns about the impacts on Bridge Street. This obviously would eliminate that and put everything in and out onto Durkee Street, as well as the first floor residential now is limited to the very northeast corner of the project. So this corner up here is the only space where there is first floor residential, and that is the location of the site where basically that first floor, in all intents and purposes, is perceived like a second floor. It's up in the air. And in fact, obviously we needed to relocate the residential entrance to the building. And there will be a basement entrance to residential offices off of the Riverwalk here. And then the other entrance will be accessed via a covered walkway, similar to the one that was or is still previously and still is along Durkee Street. There'll be a similar covered walkway along Bridge Street to access the residential offices on that side.
Okay.
Question, what do you mean by residential office?
It's just the lobby for the residential space.
So all the
them.
residents can access their units from this entrance. So residents can get to their own apartment through this entrance.
Correct. There'll be an elevator and a stairway, but they would come into a communal lobby space before and access the residential space via that lobby. And I believe there's probably a staff member there working for Prime to handle residential concerns, probably located in that space.
Okay, thank you.
The basement garage.
Sorry. Just
The basement
go ahead and cut it.
garage.
What?
Go ahead. The basement garage, is that going to be for the people or is that going to be for the residents?
The basement garage will be, I think, primarily for residents. I think actually exclusively for residents.
Okay, so it's only for residents then. So that has
Correct.
nothing to do with parking that we have in Plattsburgh at this point.
No, that will not be public parking. All of the, or open to the, available to the city. So there are 50 spaces that are being dedicated to the city, and all 50 of those are still in the surface lot on the southern half of the project there,
Okay.
over here. And,
Okay.
and there was, and so just before we jump ahead, just the one last change we made was actually to that surface lot. Well, two little things. One is when we combine the entrances here, we were able to relocate the loading dock into this entrance and remove it from the surface lot. And then we shifted the surface lot farther to the east, closer to the farmers market building. Here, we basically just shifted everything in this direction, which opened up more space along Durkee Street to have a wider sidewalk along Durkee Street. So increased pedestrian accessibility and open space.
What about trucks? What about trucks that have to back up to get into the loading dock?
So they will, that is how they will access the loading dock. They will back up
But it's
into
a
the
one-way
loading.
street, a one-way street.
Correct. They would have to stop and back up in that spot.
And also that's the main pedestrian crossing. If they were parking in the south parking lot and they walk to the commercial space, they're walking right behind the truck backing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, trucks have, obviously, they have audible alerts when they back up. And, you know, it'll be striped as a loading zone. And, you know, I think it'll be pretty visible as to what's happening there. But, you know, I do think that is the best spot for the loading dock for sure. It's attached to the building, and makes it more accessible to the building, which is the goal.
Well, the concern is the pedestrian crossing right behind it. And in winter, when the snowbank is high, it's going to be a really dangerous spot.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, there will be snow removal on the parking lots, or sorry, on the sidewalks, and you know, again, trucks have audible alerts. I mean, you know, that's I don't think that's uncommon for how a truck would access a space.
There are also, if I may, you know, we've been going back and forth with the planning board and ZBA on this. Deliveries likely will be scheduled at a time. You know, we're not going to be having deliveries at rush hour when pedestrian use is the highest. You know, this type of delivery is typical in an urban environment. We can't lose sight of the fact that we are in a city.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
About the 50 spaces to the south of the building, if I remember correctly from our last meeting, that's owned by Prime, and that's going to be for paid parking, I believe you guys mentioned last time. Is that correct?
Yeah, the plan there is to mimic whatever the city does for, you know, for downtown parking. So if the city goes to paid parking, so would that lot. So however the city handles, you know, revenue collection, which my understanding is that is the plan at this point, then Prime would follow suit.
Do we know at this point what type of, is that long-term parking, or is it going to be like 2-hour parking? Do we know at this point any of those details?
No. And what you mean in terms of limiting how long someone can park there?
Correct, yeah.
I don't.
Because I know currently,
have any
you know, the
details.
Durkee Street parking lot is used a lot for when there are snow removal in certain other lots. Overnight parking is allowed on certain halves of the lot. And I just wonder if this is going to be sufficient for, you know, wintertime snow removal, and if there's overflow from the actual Prime parking lots into that, you know, it doesn't leave a lot of public spaces.
I can speak to that. This is Dean from Prime. That lot will be reserved for hourly parking. None of it will be for dedicated to our tenants, the 50 that we agreed to reserve for the general public.
Oh, could you clarify, because from last meeting I recall, the answer we got is that this is going to be paid parking and owned by Prime, and Prime will keep the profit.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I have just Scarlett.
My question is, when the people come into the city to get places and be able to park, it's not going to be near where any of the places, a lot of the places they would be going necessarily would not be right there. So they're going to wind up walking great distances to park.
We've done, just to answer, we've done extensive studies on that. The city has done extensive studies on that. They've created additional parking downtown. Ethan did a really nice presentation that the actual distances that people have to walk are less now than they would be with the new parking plan. So unfortunately, your board hasn't been privy to all of the different meetings, the numerous meetings we've been through. But the reality is that the studies are showing that the parking will be more convenient to the residents.
Yeah, and I can elaborate on that a little further. We, the city, and this is Matt Miller from the city, we conducted a study of every property within the downtown special assessment district. It's roughly 12 square blocks, determining what the average walking distance to the nearest off-street public parking option is now versus what it will be after all of the projects associated with the DRI are completed. The results of that study indicated that in 87% of cases, properties will be either as close or closer to the nearest off-street public parking option than they are now.
Okay.
Was the harbor, in some of the original talks, was the harborside parking once talked about used for overnight snow parking?
The harborside lots have never been considered as a practical option as part of the city's parking plan as it relates to the Prime project. We have.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I just got a couple questions for Turner. Can you explain what the terrace would be?
Yeah, I think it's to be sort of akin to the amenity space, but a little more formal. I think the amenity space could have, sort of outdoor games like bocce and whatnot, but the terrace would be a little more, formal sitting type space.
Is that for the commercial use or for residential?
This is Dean. It would be for both, so our residential tenants could go enjoy the space. The concept is that it would be common area to be used by the retail tenants as well, maybe a restaurant, maybe whatever it may be, and so it'll be open to the general public if they were consumers of whatever the tenant may be, and to our tenants all the time.
Okay. Any other questions, Glenn?
That kind of related, the terrace space is related to my question when I was looking at the numbers of the commercial space, which was divided into the front of house and back of house space. Could someone explain what are you referring to when you call them 7,000 square feet of front of house?
Yep.
And the 1,000 square feet of back of the house.
Yeah. So this was sort of an area of confusion in some of our last meetings as well. So when front of house, back of house, that's in reference to restaurant space. And you calculate the demand of certain utilities, be it, water, sewer, electricity, and parking based upon the breakout of front of house, back of house. And so what we're doing is making a worst case scenario for this application. So it's pretty heavy on the front of house, which has a higher demand, and the back of house has a lower demand. But, you know, in practical terms, front of house is, you know, where guests are, and the back of house is kitchen space where guests are not.
Does anyone else have questions? If not, I would like to open it up to people that have been waiting.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, Steve McKenzie, our architect, it might be beneficial for the board to see some of the architectural changes that are quite significant, if it is your pleasure.
Yeah, I think it would be worth you showing any of your, especially the view from the back.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Steve McKenzie with McKenzie Architects, and good evening, board members. Just very briefly, we have two views to show you. I think you all understand, as far as the massing is concerned, that we have a 4-story building over parking with the mezzanine that's equivalent to half the typical floor as far as size of the mezzanine, or the 5th floor, as some call it. And this view is looking from the bridge on Bridge Street. It shows how the building steps down at the end. You can see a little bit of the mezzanine, the light color at the top. And then the covered walkway that you were asking about, the view is shown there at the base. I don't know who's driving, but they're driving correctly, obviously, with the pointer. So you can access from level 1 by the covered walkway that links to a 2-story lobby, which will also house some of the management space for the housing portion. On the left, you can see a marquee, which highlights the entry to the housing from the basement level to be an access from the other side of the lobby directly into the parking, which is really how most of the residents are going to come and go, obviously, if they're using a car. So one nice thing about the setback, you can see the benefit of the 15-foot setback on this side relative to the Riverwalk, is it's going to further activate with pedestrians that part of the downtown. Again, it's about encouraging a walkable circumstance by virtue of having housing in this part of the town, which right now you don't have a lot of this sort of amenity. And then in terms of materials, we modified the exterior. All the elements that were clapboard siding before are now going to be a Stowe Creative brick at the request of the both the planning and zoning board members. And to Prime's credit, they're able to come up with the funding to make that work. So that'll be the case on the 3 outer sides of the U-shaped building, as on the ends. And then the base of the building will again be a stone veneer, a Glengarry product is what we're looking at. And likewise be a Stowe insulation product, nothing like the brick aesthetic that we have, which is a that really does a nice job of blending the energy requirements we have to satisfy for the building, the technical requirements for the type of climate we obviously have in this part of New York State, as well as the aesthetic goals for looking like a brick veneer on the building. So those are basically the changes. I'm assuming you're otherwise aware of the changes we've made before, again, in terms of the massing to lower the scale, to make it more sympathetic to other buildings downtown. We have the balcony areas articulated as punch openings so that you read massing. Likewise, that's more sympathetic to the downtown. And then the 2 corners will still be a Stowe product, still Granitex, that'll be a simulated stone. And you can see far right as well. And then the sections in the middle or at the ends, whether it's on Durkee Street or on Bridge Street or along the pedestrian walkway, which connects with the network of other parks and pedestrian routes through the downtown.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to hear from some of the public people at this point.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to start, or would you like to call on names?
I don't know who's available, but I only see some of the people. Glenn, I'm going to let you handle that because you can see more people than I can.
Okay.
And there is a 5-minute time limit.
Scott has his hand up on the list there. I mean, it seems like he should start.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We've still got a big problem with parking here. I have worked for a lot of time here on my own calculations based on the information that the applicant has provided, and I'm still coming up 129 spaces short. The applicant is using 1.5 spaces per apartment in their calculation. We've asked for, and we haven't received yet, the number of 1-bedroom apartments, 2-bedroom apartments, and 3-bedroom apartments. How many of each? You know, we know that they're not all 1-bedrooms. So we've looked at other city zoning ordinances in terms of parking requirements, such as Binghamton, Kingston, Oswego, and others. And we think that the spaces required, even by a reasonable deviation from the city zoning ordinance, together with front of house calculations, brew pub back of house, commercial retail space, we come up with a total requirement of 369 spaces. Prime is proposing 240 spaces. They actually are proposing 290, but they claim 50 of those will be available for the public. How on earth that's going to be designated inside that surface parking lot, which spaces are available for non-tenants, for non-visitors of the apartment, tenants, for non-brew pub customers, how they're going to be available for the public is beyond me. So when you look at it realistically, there's 129 parking space deficiency. The city community development office has said that they're taking the 289 spaces in the Durkee Street parking lot that are being displaced by this project and spreading them out throughout downtown. Well, that 289 number is fictitious. Deduct 129 from that, because that's what Prime is going to need for a brew pub and 104 apartment units. So we downtown city tenants and business owners are left with a big deficit, and that's concerning. And the other concern is that the city is losing control over the future development of that surface parking lot to the south of the building. If the city were to retain control of that surface parking lot, then the city could address the items that you pointed out in your original disapproval. The city could, in the future, incorporate greater waterfront and riverfront access and do the other things that you were concerned about at your March meeting. The city at some future point, if they retain control of that south parking lot, they could remove the old farmers market and turn that whole area into something better for the city. But if that property is turned over to Prime, it's gone forever, out of the city's hands. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Glenn, next person.
I see Tim Palkovic's hand.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. I was struck that by tonight's presentation that the parking lot as it exists now is not a place for people to congregate. I've lived in the city for 30 years. Well, we're closer to 40 years. The farmers market gathers there every Saturday. It's gathering there now because it's now possessed by the Prime. 1812 commemoration meets there. I've attended garage sales, Halloween walks, the Women's March after the last presidential election. That lot is used as a civic space. Prime simply does not get it. They put on the open part of the present farmer's market building civic space. That's not going to be civic space if its access is limited by a gate. I think they're planning to use the gate.
Look at this.
They haven't addressed this, but how else is it going to work that there's going to be paid parking throughout the city? Is that the cause of the parking access by parking meters and parking chips throughout the city, because there's going to be a raising gate that people have to use to gain access? The parking is so important for the city. Plattsburgh is the county seat. People come from all over the county to do business here. The computations, no matter how you make it, you might have one or two less or more parking spaces, but these parking spaces are important for the life of the city. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay.
Okay. Someone else? Since no one else wishes to speak, then, oh,
Okay. Let's see. I think we have Rochelle, is that it?
Michelle
There you
Armstrong.
go. You're unmuted. Oh, we can't hear you, even though you got unmuted.
you're muted again.
It looks like you're muted again. Even when you were unmuted, we didn't hear anything yet. Try it now. We don't hear it. So we'll let you work on that. I'm not sure if it's your microphone. So check that. We'll try somebody else. Anybody else that wants to talk? I see Sylvie Boudreau's hand. If you are open, if you can talk, we will listen to you.
I just want to make sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, because I just got a new computer in my office and I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Thank you very much for letting me speak. I have several issues. Basically, this redesign is to me, it reminds me of an old song. It's the same old wine in a brand new bottle. The issues that we've had with this project have been long-standing and they haven't really changed, and none of the changes that are being proposed are really addressing those fundamental issues. The size of the building has decreased from 115 to 104 units. We think it's still too big for our downtown, still too overpowering. And the new design calls for more retail space when we feel that more retail space is a bad idea for our downtown community, because the city of Plattsburgh currently has over 30 empty storefronts. And the last thing we need is more empty storefronts in our downtown. That's not going to revitalize it. I'm also concerned by the fact that Durkee Street is being made into a one-way street. And anyone who ever goes downtown knows that currently all the restaurants on Margaret Street get their deliveries on Durkee. And currently when trucks stop and double park to unload their booze and their food, on a two-way street, you can illegally just go around the truck into the other lane and you can get around it. And I even have video that I could show of cars doing that. Once you have a one-lane street, those trucks are just going to park there and block the lane completely. You also have a street that goes north, and it's going to actually lead right into City Hall Place, but it's going to be facing the southbound lane of City Hall Place, which is going to be a two-way street. And I think people are going to gun it through diagonally, and it's going to be dangerous. I'm also concerned by the brew pub, because the brew pub, if it does come in, and it radically changes the parking calculation. Local people are really concerned about snowband parking, how they're going to park in winter. And I really want to make one fundamental point, which I think no one really is grasping. And I don't know why it's so hard for people to grasp this. That talking to local business people downtown, if you go downtown, you'll see vote no on Prime signs in almost all the local businesses. And the reason is because most local businesses manage to make ends meet by renting apartments above them. And local businesses are telling us, local landlords are telling us, Carol, who owns Irises, is telling us that people are not renewing the leases on their apartments because they're no longer going to have guaranteed proximate parking to their apartments. And this is Pizza Bonos. Severio Minardi says the same thing. He's losing tenants because of no parking, no proximate parking. So I'm concerned that we're going to have a big apartment building downtown, and that the only people with guaranteed proximate parking will be the tenants of Prime, while the entire surrounding downtown will be blighted and dead because of this building. So if that's going to be revitalization, then, you know, I'll eat my hat. I'm also concerned about moving the farmers market. This is a county-wide issue. Craftspeople and producers from the entire county, they display their wares at the farmers market with a hope of selling them. Relocating the farmers market to an area which is difficult to find and proximate to the sewage plant, to me, is a catastrophically bad idea. And I don't really feel I should have to explain that any more than to say it.
Okay, you're muted.
Muted yourself, I think.
Yeah. Sylvie, you muted yourself. Are you done? I don't know. She's muted right now, so we're not able to hear what you.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened. I got muted. The Department of Social Services, which is a county service, employs 160 people in non-COVID times. And those 160 people have to leave their offices to go on case visitations all throughout the day. And they have secure entry and egress from their building monitored, and you know, they need to get out on the Durkee Street side. They can't go around to the other side, or they will have to now that they'll lose their parking. But this is putting a burden on the 160 people who go out for cases all day long and are going to have to go around the city and find parking. So I think all these things have not really been thought out. And last but not least, no one is talking about the pilot agreements. The pilot agreement gives 20 years of steep tax cuts to this project and only provides 4 full-time jobs in 1 year, 2021, and subsequent to that provides 0 jobs for 19 years. So you don't give pilot agreements for businesses or projects that provide 0 jobs. That's spreading the tax burden of this project onto low and medium income people, and I personally find that objectionable. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
Okay, Rachel? No, we still cannot hear you. Is there anyone else? Glenn?
Let's see, we've got J.M. Jansen.
Yes, please. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. This is Joan Jansen, and yes, I have concerns about the parking as well. One of the things that we keep hearing from Prime is that, oh, our code is so behind the times, and if we would update it. Well, frankly, I think they should thank their lucky stars for our antiquated parking code, because much like people with television sets, it used to be that there was one TV for the entire household, and it used to be that there was one car or 1.5 cars for an entire household. And now you will find a television set in every single room, and you will find each person in a household, if they're of driving age, they will have a car. So I think it's ridiculous that their calculation is going to be 1.5. I think Prime will find that it's going to be necessary. Their tenants will demand more parking. Also, another point, my understanding is that with mixed use development, the idea is that the people who live there will go to work and leave spaces available for the commercial options that are on site. However, with a gated community and with parking solely and exclusively for the Prime tenants, there is no use, no mixed use happening there of the parking. In addition to that, we finally saw the parking plan of the, I guess you could say, basement of Prime, which they have quite a few compact and subcompact spaces. And again, I took a look at the code, and Prime will tell you they're within code. They've met that. They've got the right proportion. And that's true. But it's been years since that code has been updated. And given that SUVs and pickup trucks are now outselling sedans and small cars, I would say that there probably will be extra parking in the basement because people have vehicles that won't fit into these spaces, which means that the vehicles that they do have are going to spill over into that south lot and other places around town. People have mentioned that snow, where are the current residents who live downtown going to put their vehicles during a snow emergency? And not only do I agree with that, but also if you look at the plan that Prime has for where they're going to push the snow from their southern parking lot, that's going to be into the green space and walkway that's on the south side of the building. And so basically, after a big snow or perhaps during a snowy winter, that will not be accessible. Let's not think about that connecting, because they're going to need a place to put their parking lot snow. And I frankly think that's exactly where it's going to go. Prime is very proud about the fact that they heard people comment about the aesthetics of their building. And so they've changed it to this Stowe brick, which certainly does not have the property of being good looking for 100 years, which the buildings downtown do. So I object to it on that in that regard. It may look great the day after it's installed. And the one thing though that they haven't done is that on the picture that they've developed for looking from Bridge Street towards the building, they put in lots of greenery, which is a great way to hide the fact that the inside of the U is still hardy board. And if I'm out walking around town, if I'm on Bridge Street, and in fact, Bridge Street is going to have lots of traffic now because people will have to come in that direction and make a right-hand turn at the corner past City Hall Place. So people are going to be looking at the inside of that U, and particularly because we have winter here. And so there's going to be leaves on the trees for 6 months. The rest of the time, we're going to have to look at that building. And if the inside of the U is just hardy board, it's not aesthetically appealing. It's not attractive, and you have not improved that part of it. And I think that's something that we will have to be, that residents will see. Finally, although they tout the changes, there will still be a wall. One of the things that the board objected to is the fact that there's a wall along the space where the Riverwalk would be. There will still be a wall. They have to have one to wall off the parking area. So between the two wings, the U wings, there will still be a wall there, and you will still notice that if you're on this Riverwalk, on this space, even though they may have an entryway with a marquee, the building is going to be going up and will be less pleasant than.
Okay, your time is up, so I'd like to move on. You're welcome. Anybody else, Glenn?
Mr. Chairman, if I just may have 1 minute to clarify and rebut some of the comments for the board.
Let's just
We've
wait
already
until we
heard
get
from
everybody.
you,
If
heard
you
from the
can,
public. That's where we're going to leave it right now. If there's other people from the public that wish to speak, I will listen.
I see Patrick McFarland. He's muted. And there he is.
Yes, my name is Patrick McFarland. I live in the city. I'm also a Ward 5 city councilor. That's not really why I'm here today. I'm here because I was a member of the parking committee, or I still am a member of the parking committee. And I hear a lot of misinformation going on about parking. So I thought I would come and answer any questions, but also tell you a little bit about the parking plan for the city. I heard Mr. Sheridan state earlier that if people are parking in that south part of the parking lot, that they're going to be a long ways away from where they want to go. Well, the number one part of the parking study that was done by Carl Walker, a man named John Forrester, the number one section of those 14 points in the plan was that there should be a managed parking system. He said there was basically two options. One is you can not manage parking and then have as much excess capacity as can cover the most busiest time, or you can do a managed parking system. I think all experts nowadays approve of the latter, having a managed parking system that coordinates where people want to park. Now, for businesses, where do people want to park? They want to park as close as possible to those businesses. Where's that? That's the on-street parking, the curbside parking. That's one of the most valuable real estates in the city, in any city. So people are going to want to park near there. When people go to the co-op, they're going to want to park on Bridge Street. There's 6 additional spaces added on Bridge Street, I think, unless it's been increased. Charlie can probably, or Turner can tell about that. And the way you make sure that there's parking available for those people is you have to manage it somehow. Right now, the city has parking limits, 2-hour parking. I think in that section, it's 30 minutes limits. On June 3rd, 2019, the city started enforcing its parking laws again. The parking lots should really only be used by people looking for long-term parking. No one parks down near the farmer's market to go to Iris's. The other benefit of John Forrester talked a lot about was that you should not have all of your parking stationed in a 289 parking spot on the southeast corner of your downtown. Balance it out more. As Director Miller pointed out, that I think he said something like 87% of all businesses are now closer to off-street parking. Now, like I said, I don't expect people to really park in off-street parking to go to our businesses. No one goes to the Twisted Carrot and parks in the Durkee Street lot, at least not that I see. They park right in front or down the street on Margaret Street when they can find a spot. So the whole point of the parking plan is to increase turnover on on-street parking, but yet leave off-street parking available for long-term parking. Now, Ms. Boudreau talked about DSS. Yes, DSS is the only reason that there's sometimes a parking crunch in downtown Plattsburgh. They have 160 people who work there. They all seem to drive alone. I'd also like you guys to look at the slides that John Forrester presented to the city. They're on the city's website, and they show the statistics for parking in Plattsburgh. And what you'll see there is that parking in Plattsburgh, or the driving in Plattsburgh, is above the national average in driving one person to a car. They're way below the national average of walking, way below the national average of biking. This is because we're such a car-centered city, and we've subsidized car driving to the maximum by just throwing parking. Every time a building is burned down in the last 70 years, we didn't replace it, we just built parking. And that leads to everyone driving alone. The other thing the parking committee has been looking into is other ways to deter demand for parking. There's the parking cash out option, which we would hopefully require for places like DSS. So if there's a permit system, now I know Dave Merkel's on this line. His big contribution to the parking committee was that he didn't want the special assessment district. So there's other ways to provide the funding for parking if it's not the special assessment district. That would be through a permit system, primarily, is what the parking committee is focused on right now. To do a permit system, you can't have people allowed to park for free long-term in the parking lot. So in the parking lots, there will be some sort of system where there'll be a time limit.
Your time is up, so I'd like to move on.
Okay.
Hey, Sheridan, can I just speak really quick on the parking?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland, I hear what you said, and you mentioned it was misinformation. I just want to say I hear there's a lot of concerns from the public, not necessarily misinformation, just concerned citizens. Now, as far as you mentioned, a lot of people, and it is true, I think a lot of people prefer to park on street parking for businesses, but that's not always realistic, especially during snowstorms or other things when there's a parking ban and you can't park on the street. So there's a big factor. The other thing is you mentioned driving alone. Why I think this is a countywide impact is, as you mentioned too, we are a very rural area. Most of our workers come from outside the city into the city for DSS as either employees or getting those services. Many of the government buildings or many of the restaurant owners, employees, they're not necessarily all residents of the city. So is the nature of the beast up here. We don't have a great, bus system or train system or anything like that here. So it is what it is. So that parking, whether you like it or not, is needed for people traveling alone to the city. I mean, it would be best if everybody could carpool, but that's just not realistic. If someone lives in Moores and their coworker lives in Peru, so I just wanted to clarify some of that.
Well, that's
Okay,
exactly right. Employees should really park in the parking lots. They shouldn't park in front of the streets. What you see is when the enforcement isn't in operation, a lot of business owners or people that work park in front of the streets. This is why parking meters were created in, I think, 1935 in Oklahoma City.
All right, so we're going to
I can
move
also
on.
tell you all about the snow parking.
No, we don't need to hear all about it again from you. Glenn, is there anyone else? If not, the board needs to vote.
I think Rochelle has managed to get her sound to work.
I hope so.
Yes. Yep.
Good. I had to exit and re-enter. My name is Rochelle Armstrong. I live in the city. I'm a former city councilor. I just left office in 2020. I've been a part of the application for the DRI, the selection, and the administration of the grant. And I would just like to point out that this has always been, according to the state's designation, the use for the Durkee Street lot. It received, as a priority project, $3.5 million in order to develop the Durkee Street lot. So now, there's been a lot said about the nature of the development. Originally, there was a concept of how it might be used, but as we all know, the actual project itself is always a play between those who are interested in investing and those who are going to be giving the property up for development. So I just like to say that even as far back as 1999 in the comprehensive plan, it identifies the benefit of allowing residents in the upper structures for intensive development. We would like to point out that there's also in future studies that were done, the observation that there was a great deal of substandard housing in the downtown, and that there was actually a market for more market rate apartments. The 1999 plan also suggests that we need to develop innovative parking controls to allow maximum use and limit available parking to support intensified development. Now, the waterfront revitalization program also points out that the Durkee Street lot is a prime location for mixed use development and river access. The Durkee Street real estate market analysis in 2016 also identified this as an area for mixed use. The study says that there's a real change in the housing market and people are trending away from single unit family homes, that they like the idea of coming downtown for the opportunity to live, work, and play. This study also identified the substandard nature of many of the units downtown. But with regard to objections that I've heard or concerns I've heard about this development taking away from the ability of people to access the river, I would like to point out that we have park space, ample park space, well-used park space to the north. There is a wonderful opportunity, and it's utilized all the time for that purpose. We have a streetscape, or we have another park that's going to be developed to the west, the West Telecom space. And then Prime has done a good job of widening the connection between West Telecom and through their property to what will be a much better opportunity for people to walk next to the river than currently exists. So I encourage the planning board to consider the fact that this has always been something that in concept has been foreseen as an opportunity. I really urge you to not pass up the opportunity. We are a municipality of 5.5 square miles. We have very little space. We can provide housing for a demand that is outstripping what is possible in our current geography. So thank you very much.
Okay, Glenn? Glenn? Can you hear me? Glenn?
No, we lost them.
I got you back. Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else?
There are more people. We have Renee McFarland, who's the Economic Development Director, might be able to explain if you wanted to know more about the pilot agreement.
The pilot agreement has nothing to do with us.
So that would be if the board members felt that that wasn't something they wanted to bring into this, that would be fine with me. So it's
any board member that wants to hear the pilot agreement?
I would note that Renee is also a member of the public.
Yep. You want to speak, Renee, anyways, or?
Yeah, actually, I would like the opportunity to correct some inaccurate information that was shared regarding job creation and the pilot. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Renee McFarland. I'm the Economic Development Director for Clinton County. I'm also the Executive Director of the Industrial Development Agency and our associated entities. I just want to make sure that because we are in a public forum, that I correct the record regarding some statements made about jobs for this project. So initially, I would like to point out that there will be construction jobs as a result of this project. I believe we have somewhere between 32 and 42 on the application. The project itself will also create 4 permanent jobs to run and maintain the facility. And excuse me 1 second, I have a 3-year-old. Can you go get Nana, please? So there are also anticipated to be 4 permanent full-time jobs. The other piece of this, though, is that there is commercial space that is being built there. There's no commitment on behalf of the applicant at this point in time to state specific job numbers. However, we know from experience that facilities that are built on spec do have a tendency, if they have space for a tenant, commercial, industrial, etc., they do have a tendency to bring in a tenant with job creation associated with that. This is not the first time that the IDA board would consider an application wherein the potential job creation is listed as either zeros or TBDs. The board has considered those projects in the past. those were the only items I want to address at this point. But as I said, as we are in a public forum, I wanted to ensure that the public is aware of the misinformation that was shared and that they have accurate information. Thank you.
All right. Glenn, I think at this point, we've heard from just about everybody. So I think at this time, the board needs to take a vote.
John
So I-
Seaton, John Seaton is trying to speak.
So we still have other people that want to. I've got Dave Merkel, John Seaton. There's
As long as they're going to tell me so, as long as they're going to give us something else other than what we've heard.
okay.
If it's the same thing over again, we don't need it. We've heard it. So they can speak if they have something new to add to it.
Okay. John Seaton.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, my name's John Seaton. I have JS Seaton Real Estate and Commercial Development. I've spent close to 30 years redeveloping downtown. I was also on the DRI committee appointed by the governor, and I've worked with many of the administrations with downtown development projects and also their visions. You folks, I want to thank you personally for all your hard work. This is not an easy job, and being on the zoning board for 20 years, I know the hard work that you put into it. So thank you for that. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. It's parking, parking, parking. I own 43 Durkee Street, directly across the street from this parking lot. I have the Attorney General, I have doctor's offices, I have financial planners. I have a very busy building, and I have 50 employees just in that one building. Really, the issue is at hand is parking within the geographic area of this building, affordable furniture, the co-op, downtown restaurants. My competitor, Prime, will own all the parking. I will own no parking. They will own it all. I have tenants, commercial tenants, that have already put me on notice that they will not sign a lease with me. This is putting me out of business and blatantly unfair. You made the decision the last time that this project isn't right. It is still not right. It's actually worse, with the microbrewery pushing the parking ratios through the roof. This is a mess. And I look to each and every one of you to make the right decision. We want a development. This current development that's being presented is 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag and should not be allowed to move forward in its present state. If Prime wants to be a good neighbor and be welcomed arms, just go back to the drawing board. Bring something that's presentable, and don't make your problem everybody else's problem, because that's where we are right now. Their overutilization of this land has made this mess that's now going to go into the rest of the community. The city of Plattsburgh is the applicant. Remember, the applicant along with Prime. So when they bring their data and they march out their experts, it's all been fabricated for the ends of their mean. It's not reality. We all see it. It's not reality. Go back to the drawing board and present something that fits in with our community. We'll welcome you with open arms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Glenn?
We have Dave Merkel. It's only one left I see right now.
Okay, Dave is the last one.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. You have to unmute yourself again. I tried to do it, and there you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to cover territory that's already been covered, but I will tell you that the history of the Special Assessment District was to provide parking for downtown merchants at the time and for property owners. It was a self-imposed tax, which they asked the city to apply for the state to get the permission to do the Special Assessment District. So we all have property owners that have been here a while, have all been paying on this property, and we have developed our buildings to I won't say maximize, but to cover expenses and to maybe provide some excess funds as an investment. we're being put at a disadvantage because, and I apologize if it's been said before, but we will have no free parking anymore. We are currently still paying a special assessment district tax, which is supposed to retire the debt, which the debt has been retired twice now. I have copies of the bond reduction schedules provided to me by a previous city chamberlain, and we paid for it twice. And I don't think that people with buildings that have commercial tenants or residential tenants that exist in the special assessment district should be required to have their tenants pay for parking if they are still going to enforce the special assessment district tax. That should go away if they're going to impose a paid parking. I was on the parking committee. I got off. Mr. McFarland thinks that was my reason. My reason was it was like Groundhog Day. It was the same thing over every meeting, and nothing was accomplished. And other than reams of paper generated that proved nothing. The DSS does take a lot of parking. They may cause a problem, but they also pay a special assessment district tax. The county pays that tax, so they're entitled to use the parking lot. So I guess when I was on the DRI, we never envisioned this type of development there. We always thought it would end up being some type of parking structure with something else. And, you know, the RFP was put together with maybe in a vacuum, and then it was one applicant applied. Probably not the best recipe for success. So anyway, thank you for listening to me, and good luck with your deliberations, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Glenn?
I see the only one left I see is Sue Moore. So if she can unmute herself.
You already spoke.
Hello, can you hear me?
Say that
Hello?
again. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not surprised at some of the stuff I heard tonight. It's the same thing we've heard over and over and over again with a lot of disinformation. The city has had professional parking studies done. They created a parking advisory committee. They had a parking analysis done by the Community Development Office. These studies have shown that there are plenty of spaces available in the center city area at all times. There have been many people who have worked really hard to find replacement parking, which, by the way, the people involved in the planning of the development of the Durkee lot earlier on put absolutely no thought into parking and essentially kicked the can down the road. The current administration was tasked with finding replacement parking, and I think they've done a pretty good job. The parking is spread out. It's right across from Seaton's place and Merkel's place. I don't know where they're saying there's no parking anywhere near them anymore. The number of spaces in our current zoning laws require parking for development that are inflated and outdated, and these present requirements there will never be further residential downtown. There are plenty of places across the country that have the same demographics and are doing away with parking minimums because it prevents development. It's interesting to note that some of the restaurant owners are concerned about parking due to this project, but also have no problem with parking when they want to close down streets to have outdoor dining. And I want to clarify this so they don't think I'm picking on people during COVID. They were saying this before COVID. I'd also like to point out that we as a region need more housing. Businesses are struggling to fill positions because there aren't enough places for these people to live. We need more people living in our downtown to bring more customers to our small businesses. Are we going to chase away another opportunity like we did with GE and the Bove project a few years ago? Some of the same people that are talking tonight, we're driving them out. They claim they're for development. They're not for development, only unless it's the local guys. Prime LLC has a good reputation and have worked in good faith to accommodate as many of the concerns from the public as well as the respective boards to make this project a reality. And the riverfront is going to be 10 times better than what it is now. If you leave that parking lot there and put no development, you're not going to have any pathway from the arts park to the riverfront. That parking lot's going to look beautiful. You're going to have to cut through the parking lot to go to that. And you can rub your head, whatever. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Glenn, that's it.
Okay.
I need to have a motion from the board
Or board discussion.
or a board discussion. Yeah.
I do have a few more questions that we haven't really got too many opportunities to ask. First of all, is the Durkee Street being turned into this one-way, one-lane street without considering all the tenants on the other side of the street? That's a big concern. And it seems like the design you have with the truck backing the loading design won't even work if you can't turn that Durkee Street section of Durkee Street basically to your own private driveway. That's taking away the tenants and the landowners on the other side of the street, and that's one of my biggest concern. I do see that you have made a lot of improvements or change from last time, and the rendering from looking at the building from the Bridge Street does look good, but that picture does look way more than 15 feet than you put on the number. It just looked nice because it's more than 15 feet you're putting there. And also I do echo Joe's concern with that wall. That's the same question I have from my last meeting and comment. That's the second issue. The third issue is that even with your current calculation of parking lot, you have the assumption of having a lot of compact and subcompact cars. I don't know if you walk around and see what kind of cars people are driving. People who will be able to afford to rent the apartment at your project is not going to be driving tiny cars. My friend who rent a place that's similar price tag, that she drives a huge SUV. It's just, you are wishing for a very special group of tenants that is contradictory to themselves. These features, I just don't see a real group of tenants lined up to rent your apartments. That's from my perspective. And the concern was the snow removal on the parking lot. I think my concern begin with that 10 feet of pedestrian corridor goes to the waterfront. Again, this project is such a huge block. It's not a welcoming design to allow people to have easy access to the riverfront. I do see that the big setback will improve the situation a little bit, but still, this is going to be a major fortress at the waterfront, and that wall, which has to be done because of the underground parking and the elevation difference, will be a concern, because that space, that terrace you were describing all the time available to a residents and also customer to the commercial, meaning it's not open to the public. So all the space in the middle, you call it a public space, is fairly limited in terms of access to the public. So there's still a lot of concern with this project as I see it, especially a lot of safety issue concerns. Especially if you look at the underground parking, like I said, so many compact and subcompact, and also 22 feet for people to maneuver with two-way traffic, people trying to get in and out of the parking lot. I mean, I know you're trying to fit in more number of parkings there, but that's gonna be a safety issue. And are you gonna limit people that you can only, if you wanna rent here or you wanna come here, you can only have a compact small car? It's just, I don't even know how you can enforce that with your design. I think these are some of my main concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that's a great example of all those concerns are internal. We're talking about parking, internal space.
I'm
They're
sorry,
just not within
I'm
the
sorry,
bounds of the
I
general
recognize
municipal
you.
law.
That's not internal. The Durkee Street is county
And it is
everyone
not
use that. And
proposed
Durkee Street, you
to-
cannot in your
Glenn,
design put
Bill,
it
Charlie.
into a one-way, one-lane street.
If we need to, we'll mooch you, Charlie. I'm not going to have any more. All right.
Those are
let's
my
get back. The
concerns and
board is
questions. I don't know
discussing this.
what other member on the board will say. Sorry, Shirley, I was interrupting. I just wonder what
No, that's
other
okay.
members.
Anyone else have a comment to make?
I do. And
Yes.
I think Durkee Street is more a city issue than a prime issue. And I do find that problematic, making Durkee Street one way and going so narrow, and the diagonal parking for a gain of not that many spaces, to be quite honest. So I would rather make up the spaces in some other manner. I know, Matt, I see you're writing it. And I just think that what you're gaining by doing that does not make up for what you're losing, to be quite honest with you. What I like of what you proposed from the last time is substantial. Moving the access to the underground parking off of Broad Street is a big deal. But as I say, I still don't like what you're doing with Durkee Street. And making too much of that parking for residents only and keeping too much of it in the ownership of Prime, and potentially inaccessible to the public at some point is problematic. I like that you took it, that you took the back end back away from the river, making the river access and the eventual Riverwalk development more accessible. And this is just a suggestion, but a developer that's getting, that's looking to get a pilot program and is taking advantage of a nice grant, it might be a nice gesture if you offer to participate in some manner with the development of that Riverwalk section, along your property. But that's just me, if I
Okay,
were
Tom.
taking advantage of that kind of money, that would be a
Thank
nice
you.
gesture. But that's all I have.
Is there any other board members that wish to speak? I cannot see, Glenn, who all the people are, the board members. So is there anyone? Glenn? Glenn?
Glenn, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I don't see anyone else that appears to want to speak. I do think we may have lost Gary, which would be bad.
Yeah.
Unless he says something that tells me that he's still on the call. So Gary, if you're out there, we don't see you now on the call. Okay, so that could be a problem with having a quorum. So we may have to discuss that if everybody is willing to vote or not, and whether we should continue if we don't have a quorum. Is there anyone that wants to recuse themselves or abstain from the vote that is on the board? And Kevin's got his hand up. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, Glenn, I will abstain from the vote. I don't have a conflict of interest by the county ethics rules or state rules, but I have spoken publicly on the issue, and so therefore I will abstain from participation and from voting.
Okay.
Glenn, can you possibly call Gary and see if he can come back on?
I'll see if I can get a hold of him.
Okay. Anybody else have comments while Glenn is doing that? No? Okay. Let's see if we can get Gary back.
It's me making my way back.
Kathy. We may not.
Well, it only rings. It rang about 12 times, so I couldn't leave a message.
Okay.
So we do not have a quorum, unfortunately, after all this. So you have, you know, the potential option of trying to meet at another time, and that would be something that is difficult, as we've found in the past. But with Zoom, it might be a little bit easier. We don't have to set up a room, which has always been part of the problem. We have basically until, let's see, about the 24th, say the 23rd of September, before our 30-day review time runs out. Just guessing there, because I'd have to look at the how that clock actually would work. But it's somewhere around then. So we potentially have time to have a special meeting.
Glenn?
Yes.
If we do a special meeting, can we just make a decision on this without going through this whole discussion again, seeing how we've probably covered all the bases already?
Well, I would say that would be
Short
true.
meeting?
We would not try to hear from everyone again. We certainly would like to probably have, you may want to have the applicant there, so if you have any questions, you can ask them.
I think at this point, Glenn, we just need to meet as a board. If we want to do an extra time, why don't you contact every person and see if there's a common date, if we can do within the next 4 or 5 days.
Right.
Sounds good to me, Glenn.
It's difficult for us to do this without getting Gary back to me, because other members that weren't here have got to try to catch up. It's possible, but you know, it certainly makes it more difficult.
That's what I was going to throw out there, is would we be limited to the same participants, since those that weren't here didn't get the public input?
I would say, based on who is present during this, if Gary was present during part of it or not, you know.
He was there for quite a while. I don't know what happened.
It might be his cell phone ran out.
That could very well be, because it didn't answer when I tried to call it. So.
All right. How about this? Is there anybody that couldn't do it Thursday or Friday?
Of this week or next week?
Of this week.
If it's, is it,
you wanna-
are you saying 5:15-ish?
We probably would have to give a decent amount of notice of the meeting. So it probably should be next week.
So say the 9th or the 10th?
The 9th or the 10th is fine, but it will only be the board members. We will not go through what we went through this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've already heard from everybody, so there's no reason for us to have everybody back again.
Yeah, both the 9th and the 10th are good for me.
For the record, I just submit, if there's no quorum, then technically this meeting can't proceed at the moment, and a decision cannot be made.
No, we won't be able to, but we can discuss among the people that are here whether we can meet again. So
Right.
we're just trying to see if there's a time that the people currently want to move it to, and now they know it's got to be next week. So I'll have to send out or try to get a hold of everybody to find out when that can be. If that's what, and I think that's what we have to do right now. So because we don't have a quorum, we can't decide whether we're even going to have a meeting until we do have basically a group and I can do that part probably by email, but it's
Does
difficult.
anybody object to the 9th or 10th?
I can meet either day.
Okay, so let's go for the 9th or 10th, Glenn. You
Okay.
decide which day we can get everybody together and let's get this done.
All right. And I'll see if that is possible. We'll just have to check everything, make sure it can be done.
Do we need a
Okay.
motion to adjourn or not?
We can't because we don't have a quorum, but I mean, we're basically gonna have to end because we don't have a person, basically.
Right.
Hey, Glenn,
Glenn, I can vote to adjourn the meeting.
Well, before we adjourn, can I make a last few comments? And because I keep saying that I'm for mixed use development. It's just the project itself has not really taken into consideration of the neighbors and all the other people in downtown. I mean, I think there was change, there were improvements, but put yourself as one of everyone that's in downtown and be part of it instead of being on the opposite side of it. I think that's one thing I really want to say. This is a really tough project. It's not easy to do. And I appreciate all the efforts that go into it. And we have gone through this so many times, and we do want to see development. We do want to see improvements. And mixed use development is good. It's just this particular design is not as thoughtful for the other people in downtown or the other business and residents in downtown. I think that's a few comments I want to make before we adjourn.
Okay, so let's have a motion to adjourn.
I move it, we adjourn.
Okay, second.
I'm hungry. Let's adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion's
All right.
carried.
Hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday or Thursday.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Yes.
Glenn, would you mind checking with the county attorney just about procedural matters to make sure, considering it's somewhat of an odd situation?
Yep.
Okay, thank
I
you.
mean, it's partly the timing has to meet the open meetings law and all of that good stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome. Leave meeting.
Okay.